Welcome to today's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. Today we bring a friend, a really cool guy, Jey Roman. Jey has been in the music scene for a while, been in the wrestling scene for a while, do a lot of shit. So, Jey, tell us about yourself.
Well, first and foremost, I appreciate you having me on. We've only been trying to figure this out for a year and a half, it seems like.
They're about, yeah.
They're just, hey, you should come on the show. Yeah, I definitely should. And now we finally did it.
Friday, no, I'm busy. But,
yeah. But hey, life happens. Life happens. Yep. Nah, I've been in the area that you've been in pretty much my entire life, the Troy, Ohio type area and all that stuff. Well, really the 937-513 my whole life. So I've never left Ohio as like a place to live. So first and foremost, Ohio is home. Yep. With that being said, with Ohio also being home, there's not a lot of shit to do out there. So, you find, especially when we were growing up, back in the 90s, this area has developed a lot now, but before there was nothing. And, obviously this is, pre-internet. So I was always into video games, but I was also into music as a little kid. And it would get to a point where I was one of those weird kids who would be playing the NES, but I'd have the music on at the same time at both volumes going because I wanted to listen to the game music, but I also wanted to listen to the radio, which was at the time Z93 for everybody locally. Everybody remembers Z93. Yep. That was the station, right?
Yep.
And my Fridays and Saturdays were mostly when I wasn't, out being out with friends or doing stuff with my family. My Fridays and Saturdays would be centered around listening to Z93 and the top 8 at 8. And I would be obsessed with that. The top 8 at 8 was always my favorite thing. And I would have cassette tapes ready. So when my favorite song would go on, I'd hit record real fast because, again, for the younger audience here, once upon a time, that was one of the free ways. It wasn't downloading or streaming. You had to get cassette, boom, right there in his hand. You had to get a cassette tape. Press record from the radio, and that's how you got it, or splice it if you had the double deck. You had a couple $100 back then. But so it was kind of my obsession with both video games and music were always tied hand to hand, and even to this day, it stayed that way. But that's how I got into music, was I loved listening to songs and how it made me feel. And then as a teenager, there was this local place called the Avenue, which was a Christian hangout center. And again, nothing to do in Ohio back then, beginning stages of the internet. So you went where you could, right?
Yep.
And it started off as kind of like a place where this local church did it to where teens could go and have a safe place to have fun because it was a lot closer to Dayton than obviously Troy was or whatever. And that was their main goal, was to try to get kids off the street and bring them into this establishment where they could just have a safe space to have fun. And it worked really well. At first, it was just like a little dance floor in the corner of a room that was just like extra storage space, kind of. And then for some reason, I ended up making friends with some of the people that worked there and that were playing the music. And I think I was 14 at the time. I know I couldn't drive yet, but I just went to the lady who was playing the music and I was like, "Hey, can I do this next Saturday? I'd love to play my hands." Because I would always, again, I would be playing DJ as a little kid with these tapes and everything. And I always knew that I could make good tapes that would flow well.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Yeah, sure, come on back." Because I just don't think she wanted to do it. But the very next week, I did it all night. And then from that point on, I was the DJ for the next 2 to 3 years. I don't remember what the time frame was exactly, but anytime I wanted to DJ, they let me because I was so good at keeping the flow going. And that's what a lot of people don't understand when you go to clubs and bars, a lot of DJs, I mean, rather, there's a flow when it comes to that kind of stuff. You don't go from slow song to super fast song. You have to, and that's something I was always able to, keep real good track of how the flow goes. And you got to read the room too. If a song comes on and everybody's like, "Ugh," and you start to see them kind of disperse, you're like, okay, you gotta cut this off somehow. You got to pay attention to that kind of thing. And I was able to do that at a really young age. So they let me do it for a couple of years. But about, 3 months or so into it, the movie 8 Mile came out. And I had never performed for anybody. I never even wrote down a song. But I remember 8 Mile was real big. And I knew I could sing a little bit at the time. But I was this point in time, I was getting really big into ICP, not the rap that for Insane Clown Posse, if for those who live under a rock. But I used to get really, really heavy into them around that time, and I wanted to try my hand at rapping. So the same exact way where I asked her if I could DJ, I was like, "Hey, can we do a freestyle session?" And she said, "Sure, don't see why not." So that ended up turning into me meeting a couple people, and they kind of showed me the very, very basics of how to rap almost, but it was pretty crappy because the people I was with were pretty low tier with me at the same time. Not to diss them either, but this was long before you could get in somewhere or go to your basement and record a track to
Yeah.
practice. Like everybody was garbage because we didn't have a way to perfect the craft, right?
Yep.
So it was real low level stuff, but that's how I got started. I was working when I was 16. I had to get a job to pay for car insurance. I ended up working at East Chicago Pizza with two people that were in a band at the time called Day in the Life. Now, what Day in the Life ended up becoming was Hawthorne Heights. So when I was working at East Chicago, they were working there too, and we ended up becoming friends, pretty close friends. I was one of the first people they told they got signed to Victory Records, so I've always got that to kind of hang over. It was kind of a cool moment to see them, and then they went off in MTV and blew up, and it was so awesome. But I made real good friends with Micah Carley, who was one of their original guitarists. He's no longer with the group now, but he ended up going to a place called International College of Broadcasting, which is here locally, and ended up turning his mom's basement into a recording studio. And it was very professional stuff. And he actually let me come. He charged me, which was fine. I had no problem with that. But he let me go down to his basement and record tracks at 16. So that's how I really started to learn. And he showed me the ropes to kind of like, okay, this is, cadence and all that kind of stuff. So that's when I really started to be able to dive in and get my recording feet underneath of me and learn all that. There was about a 10-year time period shortly. Well, I should say 10 years. It's probably closer to 8. I was real heavy into it, trying to do it. It was the typical local rapper stuff. But my sister ended up passing away in '06, and that kind of derailed everything. She was one of my biggest supporters, came to every single show I did, and it didn't completely jar it out of me, but there was so much life-changing stuff that happened around that time. I ended up getting in a relationship with somebody who was very toxic around the same time, super jealous. So I knew there was no way in hell I was going to be able to do what I needed to do and do any kind of music and be around this person who constantly was, she was insanely clingy. And it would be one of those things where I'd be out with friends at a B-Dubs fantasy football draft or something, and I get 3 phone calls within 2 hours. What are you doing? Da, 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 da. And I just knew there was no way it could ever happen. So I ended up cutting off music completely. And I lost a lot of passion for it in general too, because that was a really strange period in music from really '04 to about 2012. It was, think of a classic song that came out from that era. You can't do it. There isn't. It was a very dead period in music, right? So I didn't have much inspiration. I got it out of ICP, and Linkin Park was another big inspiration for me because I liked the new metal rapping sound, which will come in future here shortly in the story. Yeah. But they were a big influence on me too. And at the time, Minutes to Midnight had dropped, and I think after Minutes to Midnight had dropped, I was like, this is not the sound that I liked from them. It was more of a rock as opposed to new metal sound. And it just they kept going further that way. So my fandom was kind of dead for them at that point in time. And I just didn't have a lot of motivation to keep me going. I ended up getting out of that toxic relationship I was referring to. And at that point in time, I'd never seen ICP live to this point. It was a 2010, I think. 2010 or 2011, I don't remember. But I was like, it was a bucket list thing at that point. I'm like, listen, I'm out of music, but I've got to see ICP at least once, which is hilarious to think of because I've seen them a bajillion times since, but this was going to be my last time doing anything ICP, right? And they were at Columbus for a Hollow Wicked, and it was only them and Zug. Was it Zug Island? Yeah, them, Zug Island, and a guy by the name of Cold 187 who didn't last with the label very long. They were the only ones that were announced for the show. But I knew that there was always surprises. So I'm like, yeah, I got to go to this one. So I ended up going. And I got VIP passes to meet them because I figured this is my last concert ever. Again, hilarious, but this is my last concert ever. I got to at least meet them once, right? So it was like I checked off the box of meeting them before the show, which was again childhood dream. But then the show started, and Zug Island was okay. Cold 187 was not very good, but I remember them opening the curtain, and there was a big sign that said "Drive." And what Drive By was Blaze Your Dead Homie and ABK's group that they had at the time. And they still do, but that I think it was fairly new around that time. And the feeling that I got from that was like, the vibe of excitement that everybody was there for. And I just got caught up in it. And they killed it. Even to this day, I think that was the best set I've ever seen both of them do. Then ICP gets on stage, and there's this moment, and it's going to sound like I'm making this up, but it really happened. There's this moment where I'm in the pit rapping along to the ICP song Dead Pumpkins, and it was like everyone that was around me, the pit stopped. I'm sitting here rapping along to the lyrics, and everyone around me is stopped and staring at me. And I'm kind of like, oh, this is a dope feeling right now. At that moment, I was like, I got to give it one more shot. If I don't try everything I've got to try to pull this off and make something out of this dream I've had since I was a little kid, 14 years old in this club, I'm going to hate myself forever. And I remember driving home that night thinking this, and now it was at that moment where I thought, this is where I try it. And that's exactly what I did. Ended up going down to Cincinnati, recording with somebody. His name's Elliot Slaughter, one of the nicest, most talented producers I've ever came across. Based out of Cincinnati. He's on Facebook. If you're a recorder in the area, look him up. You're going to get great professional sound. He's not paying me to say that. I'm just highly recommended. He's a really good guy, very smart individual. Ended up recording a little 4-track EP. And what's funny about it is I didn't like it. And the girl I was dating at the time, I was like, listen, just give me your honest opinion about this. I don't care if you don't like it. I just need to know if you don't. And she goes, I honestly don't think these are very good. I was like, okay, I'll tell you what. I'm just going to put them out. I spent the money on it. I'm not a big fan of these either. I'm just going to put them out, and then I'll be done with it. And this will be the quickest comeback anybody's ever made. I can just say, yes, I put something else out, right? People actually liked it, which made it hard to perform these songs because I hated them. And I already had like this mindset of I didn't like it, right?
Well, that's I don't want to cut you off, but that's really common. Like the songs, like the songs that people as an audience love are usually the ones that are hated by the bands.
Right. Absolutely.
And that is so super common. I did not realize how common that was up until relatively recently. And you're finding out like these big hits that people had, and they're like, I fucking hate that song. I wrote it in like 5 minutes on the toilet. You know, you're like,
right, yeah, right, exactly. And it was at that point when that happened, and that I was getting messages from people, I was getting comments of people like, oh my god, I'm so glad you're back out of people that have been following me since I was young, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm going with this. So I ended up putting my all into it so much that it actually broke up the relationship that I was in at the time. I had to end up moving. I was living in New Bremen, which was about an hour north from where I'm at now. And I was putting literally so much of my life into it. I was missing everything else. It was actually kind of crappy for the situation because there were kids involved, and I'd made this, not my kids, it was hers. And then, I'd made the commitment to kind of, be more attentive in their lives, and I wasn't doing it. So I knew, if I was going to continue doing this the way I was doing it, I had to get away from it. So it sucks that it ended that way, but it is what it is. But that was also the reason why I bring that up, was because that was another motivation for me. Was I just broke someone's heart and left everything behind that I committed to. This has got to work out, because I had sacrificed so much and I'd hurt some people in the process. I've got to make this work, so I don't hate myself for doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So I ended up putting my all into it, ended up forming a group, and we were doing shows locally, and I was like, okay, we got to level up our game here. So we ended up, I was working with some people at the time. There were a group called Mass Murder Media, and they were doing shows out of this place. It's no longer there. It was in Cleveland. It was a legendary venue called Peabody's. and they were doing shows up there. And I like, hey, how'd you guys get on this? And they just kind of hooked me up with the contact information. Peabody's ended up getting shut down, so I was only able to play there once. But the place they moved to is now called the Agora Theater. It's a pretty famous theater
Yep.
in Cleveland.
Cleveland.
And so I ended up starting doing shows there. The very first show that I did there was a 3-6 Mafia show, and it was amazing. We ended up selling so many tickets that we were on second on main stage before the main touring act was on, which there was a couple thousand people in the building. From at the time, we were only playing dive bars for like 50, 60 people, right? And then we go from that to selling tickets to the show with a couple thousand people. It was kind of like, hey, we leveled up, right? It was a 3-6 Mafia's tour when they were just the Mafia 6 or whatever. But anyway, so we ended up doing that show. We were on a high. We come back, and I'm like, hey, this went great. I'm going to see what I can get onto next. The next show we did, I think it was about 6 months later. I remember it was in November. It was a Bone Thugs and Harmony show. Now, we didn't sell as many tickets to that one, which was okay because we still just wanted to be a part of it, right? Well, I ended up getting screwed over, me and the group did, because the person who was the DJ was in a bad mood, obviously, didn't want to play our music. He was playing 2 tracks at once. And we're sitting here, we keep looking back at the guy like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm just playing one. And then suddenly I look over at one point, we're about 2 songs in, and we've only got 4. So 2 of our songs are already ruined because this dude's playing 2 songs at once. And if suddenly it stops, and I look back and I see his finger come up off the board, I'm like, this son of a bitch was playing 2 songs at once. So I stopped the promoter, who I've only had one interaction with at this point in time, in which I didn't have any problems with before. But I ended up stopping him. I was like, hey, man, I don't want my money back. I just want you to be aware of this because this happened to us. And this DJ, I told him the story, what happened. And this dude looks at me in the eye and goes, nah, I don't believe that would happen. I was like, well, I'm not making it up. And it's not like I'm sitting here asking you for my money back. Like, I'm just trying to tell you this happened. And he goes, well, what do you want me to do about it? I got no time. And turns around and walks away from me. Ruined the rest of my night. Bone Thugs and Harmony was actually, they fucking killed it. It was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. But I was so brought down by that moment. Like, this is how it's going to be if I keep going down this route. So only 2 shows into selling tickets, and I'm already like, we got to hit the reverse button on this immediately. So I'm the same way. This is about 3 or 4 years after the ICP show that I attended. So same thing that happened with the ICP show. I'm driving at home and I'm thinking to myself, how can I improve my situation here? And it dawned on me, I need to book my own shows. So February comes around, tax time comes around, and I ended up spending my entire tax return to book a show at Odd Bodies in Dayton, Ohio. I linked up with Nielsen Hickson, local legend, and he had owned this building called Odd Bodies. It was about a 500 capacity building. Unfortunately, it's no longer around anymore because they had to sell the building to somebody who was shady, but that's another story. But I ended up getting together with the Odd Bodies group and said, hey, I would really like to book a show here. But what's funny about that is about a year prior, I wanted to book like a local show there. And they told me we don't have rap insurance, so we can't do it. I actually got on Facebook and started talking shit about them. And was like, oh, they can't just tell somebody no. They got to lie and say they don't have rap insurance, and that's why they can't do the show. Well, turns out rap insurance is actually a real thing, and I got schooled at that point. Actually, one of the owners now, I still associated with him on a daily basis, and every once in a while he'll be like, hey, remember rap insurance? I'm like, yeah, I got to eat that one forever. I was totally wrong. I was an ignorant ass know-it-all and got schooled by that one. But anyway, so the fast forward a year, they took mercy on me, and I'll be forever grateful for Nielsen Hickson for giving me this opportunity because he knew I was talking shit about him and his organization. I mean, it wasn't a secret. And he still was like, yeah, come on in. You know, it's fine. We're going to give you this shot. Just out of the kindness of his heart. He could have been like, fuck you for talking shit about us. We're not giving you any opportunity. And this
I've known Nielsen forever. He's a cool cat. He is.
Yeah. One of the best dudes I've ever met in my life. And gave me the opportunity. I ended up booking Anybody Killer because it just so happens that he was around the time I got my tax return, was booking his April Fool's Foolin' tour. And I was like, great. You know, he's somebody I've looked up to. Again, rewind to the ICP show. That ICP show is very important in my history because that was like assigned to me. He was there for the show that made me come back. I've got to pull this off one way or the other. Didn't make a lot of money off of it because I broke even. I was very stupid in the business. I accepted something called a back end deal, which is fairly common for promoters, but not for promoters of ABK size. No offense to ABK, but he doesn't pull crowds like that. I should have never agreed to that, but I had no idea that that was even a thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't make a lot of money off of it, but the night was very successful. It was one of the most successful nights on their tour. We packed the place out on a Wednesday, which is just unheard of. From there, I ended up working with Odd Bodies for about the next 4 years. But in the first 6 months, we had gone from booking a show with ABK that pulled about 220 people. In October, I'm booking Twisted, which the rise in that is insane, absolutely insane in 6 months because we sold out. Within 6 months, we were going from half the room filled to that, and that's a big deal. That's a lot of promoters have got to work for years before they have that kind of a success. And when I was able to do it in 6 months, I found out I was very good at running shows. Again, going back to the DJ vibe.
Yeah.
When you're at a show, and this is a lot of things that people mistake when they run their own shows, the background music you play is very important because it can set the tone for the entire room. And I try to stress this with anybody when it comes to shows, whether I'm running them or somebody else is just asking, for advice on things. The background music that you play at the show is just as important as the headline, because that's what's going to be playing throughout from when people walk in the door and when they walk out. And you've got to set that tone. It's got to be fun. It's got to be uplifting. You have to go through an entire catalog,
Yeah. Well, I like going to them when down at Bogart's, they tend to play like in the middle between bands, Neil Diamond. And
yes.
Everybody gets into it. They're like, that. The whole crowd.
One of the coolest instances of that exact same thing. I was working security, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but I was working security for Odd Bodies when Devil Driver was there. And the entire night they were playing Earth, Wind, and Fire. And everybody was just partying, having a good time. Earth, Wind, and Fire at a Devil Driver show. I think it was Devil Driver, Fallujah, Death Angel, I think was the co-headliner tour. So all these super heavy bands were there. And the crowd was having fun to Earth, Wind, and Fire. Very important to the process. But anyway, so I forget where I was at. Let me onto that tangent. But that's where I learned to not only everything came full circle for me at Odd Body. So got a lot of success thrown at me very fast. A little too fast. There was a lot of growing pains after that Twisted show where I had to kind of get my mentality back in check, because at that point I didn't realize just how many snakes there were locally when it came to who's going to be chomping at your feet to take the momentum that you had started. And there was a lot of them. Even to this day, nobody's been able to replicate what I've been able to do in such a short period of time. And I'm a pretty humble dude when it comes to my accomplishments. I know how to run a fucking successful show and to promote a successful show. There's a reason why I was able to take $1,000 and turn it into a career that ended up getting me across the country 3 times, But anyway, so I ended up taking that momentum. I was asked by a local band that had been in the underground for years and years and years. I was actually jealous of these guys at one point in time, and I've told them this before. They were called Menace to Sobriety. And they were playing, Menace was playing Gathering of the Juggalos on the main stage at the height of the Gathering of the Juggalo era in like 08, 09. And I would see it on Facebook and just, God, I hate these guys. And it was all out of jealousy, right? I 100% out of jealousy. I've told them that before because they were living what I wanted to do, and I wasn't doing music at the time. So fast forward, I'd started making all this noise in Dayton. That it caught their attention, and they had been on a couple year hiatus at this point in time, but they were looking to get back in around the same time I was starting this. So I ended up making friends with them while the 6-month period in between when I started in October. I ended up booking them for a show, becoming friends with them and everything. And then one morning I get a phone call from Doc, who was the lead singer, and he was like, hey, his exact words were, how would you like to be a part of one of the best bands in Ohio? And in the back of my head, I'm like, who the fuck is he talking about? Because there's no way, like, not to say that it wouldn't be them, but they were such a tight unit. I'm like, he can't be talking about me because I don't play an instrument. And the 2 vocalists do such a great job with each other. There's no way that's what he's asking for. This goes over through my head within a split second, right? And I was like, well, what's going on? And he informs me that they were gearing back up to really start making a push to give it kind of how I was, where it's like, I got to give this one more try. And the vocalist at the time, named Johnny O, he wasn't willing to do what they wanted to do as far as traveling was. He had a family, and they were looking to buy on at the time. They were looking to buy on to the Tech Nine tour. Well, the band was. I wasn't. They were. And Ryan being Johnny O, Ryan is his real name. He didn't want to go on a tour, which is hilarious because I ended up taking his spot in the band. And the tour we ended up going on was my first tour, very first tour. It was a Twisted, their Spectacular Horror Show tour. Ryan actually came back to the band, and we were a 3-headed unit, and he still went on the tour that he originally quit for. So it's funny, I make fun of him, like, "Hey, ain't you even that? You're supposed to be at home. You're not supposed to be here." But so that's how I got in. Was he didn't want to do the tour, so I took his spot. And I had, again, a lot of growing pains because at that point in time, I learned learned more skills musically being with Menace than I had ever in my entire life. I had a big growing curve. It took me about a year to kind of hone my skills to the point where it wasn't embarrassing. And so that's why they ended up asking Ryan to come back, because Ryan saw a lot of these shows that we were doing. There were a lot of sellouts in Columbus. We were traveling to Michigan. A lot of them were a lot of sellouts, and we were playing to a lot of people. And he saw the success and was like, okay, yeah, I'd kind of like to come back. And I don't blame him, because if I saw, a band that I wasn't sure was going to be successful start to get these, moves, and somebody like me was struggling, I don't blame him for trying to take his spot back if he wanted it. There was no heat there at all, and people thought it would. It's funny because I got sat down and talked to, and I was kind of like, okay, cool. Because I knew I was struggling. I didn't want to lose my position, but I knew I would have to work for it, right?
Yeah, you gotta try harder.
Yeah, I would just have to try harder. And that's exactly what happened. Him being there pushed me to be better. So I learned more with my time with that band than I did anybody else. And again, we ended up going on my very first tour. It was a 35-day run or something like that. Maybe more, maybe a little bit less. I don't remember exactly. But it was with Twisted, Mac Lethal, Blaze Your Dead Homie, and ROC's group called Zodiac Imprint. I described this tour like this. It was the best, worst, funnest, shittiest ride I've ever been on in my life, this one tour. Every time we get together and talk about this, we bring up new shit. I mean, we almost died multiple times on this tour. There were shows where literally we pulled up to the venue, played, and left because this RV had given us so many problems. I'm not over exaggerating, Paul. Every single day that RV broke down, and we had to fix something. By day 3, we had a cracked radiator. And I remember we were in California, and there was only one radiator shop locally, and they said, yeah, we can get you one, but it's going to take another week. And at that point, we can't hang out in California for a week, right? But luckily, the crack was at the top of the radiator. So we were like, okay, we can't just keep dumping money into this radiator, so we'll only drive at night and use water, unless we're in the desert because it gets too cold. We can't use water in the desert, right? So we were thinking, okay, cool, that'll be the last of our concerns. We probably switched every tire at least 3 times over, I think. If it wasn't for that RV, we would have came back with 10 grand cash. It was one of the craziest rides, and don't get me wrong, we had a lot of good times on that tour. There was a lot of we played a couple different stadium shows on the West Coast. I'd never been on the West Coast. That was my first time being in like California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico. Texas. I've never been to any of these spots before, right? So all that was cool. But it bankrupted us. So while we did get a bunch of recognition from this tour, and we created a lot of good connections at that point, we ended up becoming friends with all the Twisted staff. Twisted themselves we're telling people like, you guys killed it on this tour. Blaze ended up stopping me at the end, like, man, you guys did it. There's been tours where I've been through less than you guys were, and I called out. So he was, saw everything we went through. We got so many props with this tour. We had no money after the fact, and it was tough because we had all this momentum, nothing to do with it. We couldn't print merch because, unfortunately, and I don't think he would take this personally, so I'm okay with saying this. Doc was very picky on the product that we put out, and every time I try to convince him, we have no money right now. We have to suffer on quality just to get something out there and kind of build up our bankroll. He didn't want to do it. If it wasn't the best quality, it wasn't going out. And it's his band. That's okay. That's his decision. I ended up working to the point where the manager of the band at the time, his name is Voodoo. He was a real piece of shit. I didn't like this guy at all, and I would tell him to his fucking face. And he's not going to be watching this because he's got no love for me either. But he didn't like the fact that I didn't like how perfectionist that he was. He was over perfectionist. Like a project that we would have to do, I would send him a graphic or something, and he would send it back and go, "That comma needs to go down 2 centimeters." So I would have to completely re-render this project for one fucking comma, and it would take hours to get this stuff done. And then he'd go, no, bump it up 1 centimeter. Like that kind of picky shit that nobody in the underground music scene gives a fuck about. So we butt heads constantly, right? And it got to a point where I eventually had to tell him nobody gives a fuck. Like if we're doing track records here, mine's way better than yours because I've actually had success with my way. You've had virtually none. He didn't like that. So, and it wasn't exactly in those words. I am embellishing it a little bit because I've been long-winded as it is. But that was the gist of it. And he quit, and I took over. The band manager, it was funny, Doc called me and said, well, Voodoo quit. I guess you're taking the spot. Okay, cool. So I ended up becoming the de facto manager for the band. Something happened. And again, this isn't an insult to Ryan, but we ended up recording. There was a record contract, and I've never said this publicly, but I'm going to say it now because it doesn't matter. We had a record contract on the table with Twisted after that first tour. And they wanted us to come on board, but they didn't know how to use us. So we needed to get some kind of EP together as quick as possible and record it. So that March comes, and they had actually asked me, Twisted, being Twisted, asked me to come in and drive their budget truck for a tour because the guy that normally did it couldn't do it. And they asked if anybody in the group would want to do it. And it was like two weeks out before this tour, and they trusted us again. We built that relationship where they knew that we were hard workers. So I got a call from Twisted's drummer, and he was like, hey, do any of you guys want to do this? And I was like, I didn't even ask any of the other guys. I was like, fuck it, I'll do it. So I ended up leaving my now wife within 2 weeks' notice. My job was cool enough at the time where I was like, listen, I'm doing this. And I didn't ask them. I said, I'm doing this. And they were like, yeah, go ahead. We'll talk when you get back. I was like, all right, cool. So I ended up driving for them on this tour to kind of build that relationship even more. I was so motivated. The day we were supposed to leave to go to Baltimore, I was supposed to drive from Dearborn, Michigan, all the way to Baltimore in one night, which was fine, with all their stuff. I had to beat the tour bus there for the day after. My dad actually passed away that day. I didn't give a fuck. The only thing that would have kept me from going is if something happened to my wife, my mom, my sister, her kids, or anything like that, right? Anything else didn't matter. So I ended up missing my dad's funeral basically to go on this tour. That's how motivated I was to get this done. So halfway through the tour, I knew the guys were back home recording all this material that we're trying to send to Twisted. I get a phone call from Doc, and Doc's like, man, we're at the studio. Ryan is shitting the bed. This is some of the worst stuff he's ever done. Ryan is one of the most talented guys I've ever seen vocally, heard, perform, whatever. He's top tier. But if he ain't motivated, he ain't fucking doing it. And I think he would agree with that. And I don't think he was motivated anymore. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. I don't know. He's one of those guys who's so good that once he's performing at a top tier level, he doesn't want to do it because it's no longer a challenge. And the guy's a legit genius, but a lot of. Go ahead.
Is he one of them guys that what is it? Afraid of fear of success? Maybe that kind of. I know people like that. That
it could be.
Yeah, that are on the verge. All they gotta do is get that little bump, and they're like, they almost panic because they're like, I'm successful now. If I can't fucking handle that.
Could be. Yeah, that could be. That could be. But either way it goes, it was very confusing. But Doc had to make a decision and went to Ryan and said, hey, listen, we're going to put Jey in some of these spots that you rapped. And Ryan, I don't know what made him feel this way. I don't really care what made him feel this way. It's water under the bridge. But Ryan said, if you replace me with Jey, I quit. Doc said, I guess you quit. So that ended up putting us behind about a good month and a half, 4 months. The window that we had in that time to get this material to Twisted's label, Magic Ninja Entertainment, closed between the delay that took us to get this out and when we finally submitted it, they were starting to go through financial troubles hard. And I think they started to freak out because when ICP had a band, they couldn't figure out how to pay these people, because underground music works great if you're a rapper in that scene. If you're a band, not so much. The chunk that comes in is not a whole lot to split up. So I think they started to panic when they had financial issues that we didn't know what to do, they didn't know what to do with us. So a couple of years go by, and I kind of felt like they were stringing us along. So eventually I ended up calling him out, him being George, who's the CEO, if you will, of Magic Ninja Entertainment. I kind of had to call him out, because I was like, listen, you need to tell us something here, because we spent the last 2 years courting you guys. If this is going to happen, we need to know. And he ended up getting back to me and saying, I'm sorry, we just can't make this work. I was devastated for about 2 weeks. It hit me really hard. We ended up losing our drummer at that time, because I think everybody started to realize that, we put all of our eggs in one basket, this basket of building this relationship with this group who was stringing us along. And they were stringing us along because I was one of the only people in the country they could go to and they would get a sellout show or close to it. Twisted was not doing good business at the time. This was when the whole controversy started, when Twisted and ICP really started butting heads. They had taken a very gigantic hit in attendance, and I was one of the only stops they could go to in the country, and the show was good, right? So they were stringing me along to keep that relationship going. And I'm not a dumbass. I figured it out fairly quickly, but I thought if I could keep proving to them I could make them money, that I could keep doing these things for them to show them that we would be willing to do whatever it took to make this successful if they brought us on. In my mind, I thought eventually I would be able to show them and they would bring us on board. But once I called them out and they said no, I was like, okay, yeah, they were just using me basically. And I don't mean that as like, well, it was me. It's a business. You got to do what you got to do to keep the business afloat, and they weren't doing very well. So I can't say that if I was in his shoes, I wouldn't do the same. But it was a hit to my ego, because it was like all these things were happening, and then it just stopped.
Yep.
And the momentum was no longer there. The morale was no longer there. Everything started to fall apart around that time. But within a year, we were starting to make a little bit of money with these products that we were putting out. We had this. It's funny. What ended up saving us financially was a lanyard. This lanyard was done by this group called Custom Hat Pins. I don't know if they're around anymore, but if they are, they're one of the best places I've ever ordered products from. But this lanyard, we just wanted it with our logo on the outside. That was it. What this place ended up doing was taking our design for this lanyard, redesigning it. They ended up putting a patch on the inside, and it had our skull head logo on the inside. So the outside was our band logo, but on the outside, on the outside was the band logo, but on the inside, it was just like a pattern of our skull all the way through it. It was one of the cool. I still have a bunch, actually. There's one somewhere in this room, but it was one of the. I don't have it hanging up. It was one of the coolest pieces of merch I've ever had. Well, the band ever produced. People still have it to this day. Like I have still people come up to me, my boy Tony being one of them. Every time I see him, he'll go, "Look, Jay, I still got it." It was that cool of an item, right? And that actually saved us financially, because we couldn't keep the motherfuckers. We were putting in orders faster, and this was before like lanyards were really big for bands and stuff. So we were one of the first people to do it. I'm not saying people copied off of us. We were just one of the first people to get the idea, and financially started to pick up for us. We ended up doing a couple more shirts that were really started to take off. We were making money. We were starting to book shows about a year after we got rejected. We were getting offers from people to come in, and we got an offer to go on a mini run with Young Wicked. We were booking shows for people were paying us to come out. And this was in February of 2020 when we started booking all of these shows. And momentum was picking up again, and me and Doc were like, yes, this is it. This is when it's going to happen. Then March came around of 2020, and we all know what happened then. Everything shut down. Shortly after that, we tried to do like some virtual events. We didn't want to give up, because we just felt like we had all this momentum before COVID hit. As long as it's a short pandemic and things start opening up again, we should be able to pick this right back up. Obviously, that wasn't the case. Everybody on planet Earth saw that played out. But eventually, about 7 months into COVID, at that point, I think we all were just like, this is going to take a while. And by the time it's done, our momentum's gone. And I don't think anyone, myself included, wanted to try it. And that was it. We were done. We kind of had a group meeting about it where we all kind of decided, we could keep going, but why? There was so much that we had accomplished. Even in the short time when I was with the band, we had accomplished a lot. We had done a lot of cool shit. Now add on them who were doing cool shit in 2008, 2009. They had checked off literally everything, every bucket list item for them 3 times over. What was left for them other than to sign a record deal? Working the way we would have to work is for a group of much younger guys. No, this is true. They're all a bunch of old folks. They're not, and it takes a young buck to be on the road. I don't even to this day, with some of the connections that I still have, which I'll talk about this a little bit more here in a second. Even with the connections I still have, they all know I won't go on another tour. It would have to be some killer shit to get me on another tour, because that life it's fucking, you have to be made for it.
Yeah.
And people think, I have people ask me all the times, oh, you've probably seen a lot of cool shit, haven't you? No, I've seen a lot of exits and a lot of cool places, but you know what I'm saying? Like you travel to all these shows for you know exactly what that's
like. Yeah, I was on the road for years doing comic book conventions. I saw a lot of shit alongside the road.
Yep.
I didn't get to stop. I had to go make money. So,
right, yeah. You don't see sorry, I gotta get my vape here.
You're good.
We were going a little long. That's fine though. We don't have a time limit here, right?
No.
Okay, all right, cool. Because I've been long-winded as fuck.
No, you're fine.
Awesome. So
we've gone 3 hours before.
Oh shit! Yeah, I still got some. All right, we're good. Yeah,
we're good.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, but you have to be about that life, or else it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling driving in the middle of the night and being jealous of all the houses that you're driving past because they're asleep in their own bed, and it's like 3 weeks in, you're getting your showers wherever you can find them, if you can find them. Laundry is non-existent, a lot of places. And I thought when I actually went on the tour with Twisted and they put me in hotels every night, I'm like, this is going to be way easier. No, the fuck it's not. It's just difficult in different ways. Yes, I had a hotel every night. Yes, I had a shower every night. But I got to be there before anybody else. So I'm driving all night long, and so there was one stop in somewhere, I don't remember where it was. It was Massachusetts area, but not exactly, because they had that stupid accent that, everybody has up there that, I got to go get some beers. Ugh, whatever. I hate the Boston accent. But anyway, so I got there early. And even though it was spring, it was still fucking winter in that northern East Coast area.
Yeah.
I found out real quick in May in the northern East, snowstorms are still happening. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And we got caught in one. But I got there at 7:00 in the morning. Venue's not open till 12. So what are you gonna do? You can't take the budget truck that I was driving anywhere, because that's all filled with Twisted's property, and the whether it be merch, the actual sounding equipment, everything that they had was on this budget truck. You do not travel with it. You go to the venue and you park. Yep. So the only thing I had to do at the time, again, it's snowing outside, catch some sleep in the back of the budget truck. That was fucking tough because there's no heat. Nope. I can't turn on. At the time, I was driving with somebody else, and he was made for the road, so he had no problem sleeping next to another dude in the cab. I didn't want to, so I was like, "You can have the cab, dude. I'll sleep in the back. I'll make it work." So I was like wrapped up like a mummy with a blanket in the middle of a snowstorm, trying to keep warm. That's what touring is like, for the workers and the people that are putting in work. There's nobody that the people have a thought in their mind of what touring life is like. I've never seen it, not once, not for a single person that I've talked to, not one thing that I've experienced. It's rough, unless you're a megastar like Aerosmith or fucking Taylor Swift, or that kind of level where all you got to do is book it and they'll come. You're working your ass off.
Yep.
So it's a rough life, And so even though, this is my long-winded way of saying, even though I was still willing to kind of move on musically, I was worn out because, again, I was the manager of the band, and every single day I was doing something for it, trying to keep things going. I was the one that ran all the social media accounts. I was the one that did all the graphic design. I'm the one that does all the booking. I was worn the fuck out too. And I think what had happened when COVID got shut down and it made me be at home, I was like, God, the couple of months that we were inactive, not having that stress on me 24/7 was incredible.
Yeah.
So I wasn't necessarily like, I didn't want to quit the band, but I wasn't sad about it either. And again, I checked off so many things going all the way back, to 2010, when I saw that ICP show. I checked off everything I wanted to do except one. I'd played a gathering. I've been on multiple tours. I was on a first name basis with people I grew up listening to. I had done these shows across the country that, in a stadium, uh, in a fucking pocket bar. I've done everything I've ever wanted to do except get signed by a label. But that's not going to happen. And in hindsight, really glad it didn't, because when COVID hit, that cash flow would have completely disappeared, because the only way we would have been able to make our money would have been off touring. That would have been the good chunk of how we brought that cash in. That's how a lot of people bring in cash in the underground, mainly, unless you're AXC, who I'll talk about here in a second, who they move so much merch, they can go out where they want to. It's a great position for them to be in, but that's very rare. So it was a blessing in disguise that we didn't get that signing, because we would have been fucked. I would have been fucked.
Yeah,
There's no way financially I would have been able to support my family at that point in time. So it worked out for the betterment of everybody, really, that we didn't get signed. So fuck it, yeah, we're done. We did everything we needed to do. So what I've done since then, I've taken my stage running ability and my ability as a promoter and to keep the show going. Throughout my time in the last 10 years doing this, again, I've met this group of guys. They're called AXC. They're on my shirt right now. Ala Zululu is their name. They're an underground rap group. One of the guys in the group, his name's Lee Carver, is one of my best friends in the entire world. He was the best man at my wedding. I would literally die for this guy if I needed to. Like, that's how close we are. He ended up joining up with them, and they ended up getting the spot that we were supposed to get on Magic Ninja Entertainment, which has fit them like a glove. They have done very well for themselves on this label, right? So, and I couldn't have been happier for them. But as they were starting off, it kind of realized that they needed somebody to do for them what George from Magic Ninja Entertainment did for Twisted when it came to some of these shows and stuff like that. And I had experience running shows, so their very first album release party that they did on the label, I ended up promoting them, doing the show running for them. Went off great. And what that ended up doing was showing them that I know how to do this. And as they progressed, they've taken me along with them in some of these shows. And in the last year or so, well, I shouldn't say that. Last 2 years, it's really amped up my involvement with these guys and what I do with them. Now I'm basically the guy that runs the show there. Literally the show. There's plenty of people that do work there. My job is the show part. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm not the big boss. I don't think really anybody is. Everybody kind of pulls their own weight when it comes to the staff for LLE. Long Live Evil is the name of their group, their label, so to speak. Everybody that's there as a worker pulls their own weight in a certain specific spot. My spot is the show. I'm the guy that runs the ambience of the show. I'm the guy that gets the talent on stage. I'm the guy that keeps the flow going. I'm the guy that communicates with the talent. And I do this not only at their spot shows, but also in their annual, now we're in year 4, will be next year, called Camp Zool, where they go to this place called Terrortown. They'll be this October for their Night of the Zooligan show. It's a place called Terrortown. It's an extreme haunt. For people that don't know what that is, it's basically one of those places before you walk in, you have to sign a waiver that says they can do whatever they want to you.
They will kidnap you and bury you and all that fun shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've seen it happen. They will do it. And it's fucking hilarious. But it's a great fit because these guys, their imagery fits this place perfectly. And we go there every summer now. We started off in the winter. The very first one we did was winter of 2021. It was really cool. And because you didn't have heat on you, didn't have to worry about being dehydrated. Day 1 was great. Day 2, when we had the first snowstorm we've had in Ohio, not so great because people were camping outside. Which day 1, it was great. The weather was like mid 60s, I think. It was perfect. But we learned that it was probably smarter just to do it in the summer at that point. So we've done it in the summer. The 2 times afterwards. And it's gone great. It's grown both years. From year one to last year, the attendance is going up. They're really building a fan base, and I feel very fortunate that they've taken my abilities that I've learned at Odd Bodies as a promoter, and I've been able to apply that to what they need me to do. I wouldn't say it was a rough learning curve, but luckily, one of my best friends being in there, and I've been cool with the other two guys, Joe and Billy. Literally, they were supposed to be on the very first ABK show I booked, but my best friend Lee took the spot because there was some mix up in the paperwork. So it's weird because like we've all been connected from day one from this one ABK show because that was my best friend Lee. That was his first show too as a returning act. So this one ABK show tied us all together. It's strange how the universe works. You know, when people definitely say that there isn't some other power, whether it be religious or whatever, you're fucking crazy because there's doors that bring everybody together. And I'm not saying, religion is the way to go, but there's definitely a force out there. My whole life is proof of that, right? So there's so many things that tied in and weave into where I'm at right now. Even my wife, I've known my wife since the 8th grade, so all these things have just been in existence. But anyway, so we've built this relationship to where they trust me to do this for them. I love doing it for the audience, and they do it for the Zooligans. It's some of the most passionate fan base you'll ever find. They self-police the environment, so when there are some sketchy people around, they take care of it. Everybody's there to help and love and just have a good time. And all these shows I've ever done, it's one of the favorite shows I've ran for is for these shows for the Zooligans. It makes me feel like what the Juggalo scene used to feel like. Because one point in time, it wasn't so centered around. Today's Juggalo scene is still good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to insult them, but there's a group of people that are kind of like the mean girls of the group. There are some girls in that group, but there's also some people who think they're way more important than what they really are that kind of bully people online, and the scene has really hurt from it. I think I just read something where Violent J said the last gathering pulled a whole $5,000. That's how much the very last gathering of the Juggalos did. I don't remember who he was doing the interview with, but it was very recently, with like in the last couple of weeks, where he said the gathering only netted $5,000. And honestly, I feel like that's a lot because the scene is just not what it was anymore. It's more of a popularity contest than it's ever been. And the Zooligan scene's not like that. They're accepting, don't get me wrong, but they're going to do what they want to do. And that's what the entire scene was kind of built around, was that vibe. Anybody can come in, but we're also, you're not as important. Nobody is as important as anybody else.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's in my business too. There's a lot of guys out there, the gatekeeper guys, the ones that are trying to keep new people out. And Tina's pointed this out to me. She goes, well, you've done that before. I was like, I don't mean to, because, and I'll be the first one to admit it. I'm one of the kids. I grew up in a time where I'm a comic book guy. I'm a video game guy. That shit was made fun of. You were put down.
Yeah.
Fucking people try to beat you up and shit because of that.
People don't realize that, dude. One point in time, if you played video games, you were looked down on.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't, you were a nerd.
Oh, yeah. Fuck. That's like, okay. I remember, it's funny because one of the same guys that gave me shit for playing D&D and collecting comics in high school, I remember standing in line for one of the Lord of the Rings movies, and that dude's standing behind me, and he's talking to me, and and I'm like, dude, this is the same shit you made fun of me for. And my wife, because I got bitter about that shit at a certain point, because I was one of the ones where you got to pay your dues. You got to go through bullshit to be able to be, cool with it. And I went through the bullshit, and now I just see these kids who are just like, oh, yeah, I'm a nerd. Fucking yeah. And I'm like, you didn't do nothing. You just
right. Yeah.
Like, fuck. I was like, and
you didn't go through the rite of passage.
Oh, yeah. I didn't, and now she goes, it's different times. It's like, I know I shouldn't. And you get them guys who are still that way. And I've moved on. I'm fucking adult about it. I'm old. I'm too old for that bullshit. And now I got my kids and stuff, and I tell my son Joe, and I was like, I look at Joe and I'm like, you were the bane of this, because you were that whole, right. I was born into it. I was because I was like, you didn't have a choice, and I never pushed it on my kids at all. Me being a fucking huge great geek nerd, I never pushed that on my kids. I wanted them to do whatever they wanted to do in life. And luckily my kids are fucking really close to me and Tina. And, and so I can associate with them. We're, it's not like me and my parents. My dad don't get this shit at all.
Right.
And but no, I mean, somewhat I can associate with gatekeeping because you're older, you're like that group that started, you're them guys that were there at the beginning. And if you were a juggalo, in the ICP when it first started, I can see you kind of being bitter later when all the other guys just showed up and we're just like, oh yeah, we're fucking, we're juggalos, and you're like,
Yeah.
you didn't have to put up with bullshit. I did.
Yeah.
So
When ICP started getting their shirts sold in Walmart, I was like, what the fuck? They're saying it is such a popular thing now that the shirts are in Walmart. I remember because we were still to this day, people think LOL Juggalo, even to this day, it's always carried over. But everybody knows it's so funny too because I always get the damn song name wrong. Everybody goes, "Oh yeah, I really like the dating game song," which is not what it's called. And I think it's something that's so hilarious to OG Juggalos. Everybody goes, "Oh, the dating game song," and nobody even corrects them anymore because why fucking bother? But so even all the people that make fun of the group, they know who they are.
oh yeah,
And you know what I'm saying? Like, and they just recently went platinum on TikTok. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying?
No,
Little offline humor there.
yeah.
But they just went platinum off TikTok, so people know who they are, even though they are looked down on. But even still, like when all the superhero movies came out, and it's funny to me, and this is something I've always wondered, and I've never really spoken until this moment because it's never came out in a conversation. Why is it still to this day, if I tell people or if I make a post or whatever it might be about a comic that I'm reading, why is it people still kind of look at me weird when comic book themed movies are have dominated society for the last decade? Why is that okay?
Two different monsters.
It's so ridiculous.
And it so shouldn't ridiculous.
Be. It's the same fucking thing.
I know. There's people who come in my shop who are like, oh, I'm a huge Deadpool fan. I'm like, oh, what's your favorite Deadpool storyline? Well, I like the movies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, have you read the comics? The fucking comic books are killer, man. Back in the day, them early ones were phenomenal. Later ones, not so much. But and there's people who do that. And they'll look at you weird because, they're like, oh, man, I remember, I love Adam Warlock. Adam Warlock finally appeared in Guardians 3. Is he the version one? Oh, you ain't seen it yet? Okay, why don't you see it?
No, that's okay. Enough time has passed. Yeah. Spoilers are my own fault.
Spoiler. Is he the version that I grew up on? No. Yeah. Is he a kind of reboot, twisted version to fit with what they need him to? Yes. Does he still have some of the same qualities and characteristics? Yes. But, those people that are going to see Guardians of the Galaxy are not going to go find a 40-year-old copy of Warlock and read it.
Right.
Where I read the 40-year-old book 40 years ago when it came out.
Yeah.
And that's what made it. I had a friend give me shit because I didn't much care for the Joker movie. I can't say I didn't much care for it. I didn't like it at all. Fuck it. I did not like that movie. I gave it a chance. I wanted to like it. I went in. I almost walked out. And I never fucking walk out of movies. And I have a friend who gave me shit about that. He goes, oh, you're just not, because it's not fucking Avengers Endgame. I was like, Avengers Endgame is not the best movie. I was like, the best comic book movie that has come out, period, as I smack my fucking microphone, is Logan. That is the best fucking comic book movie. That is just a fine movie, period.
Mm-hmm.
It's a comic book movie. It's a bit of a Western. It's a drama. It's a family movie. It's all these movies, and I love that movie. And I don't know. It's one of the ones where people will look at this and like, oh well, you don't like it because of that. Well, Avengers Endgame and stuff like that. I've been waiting for that since 1991.
Yeah.
When Infinity Gauntlet dropped when I was a kid. Fucking 17. But it's like Star Wars movies. Everybody's like, oh, fucking Disney's killing Star Wars. I'm like, really? Have you watched any of the TV shows? Well, I don't watch TV shows.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they're just going off of basically the movie vibe.
Yeah.
But you know what? Here's the thing. Here's the thing that the stance that very few people take when it comes to the Star Wars franchise, at least. Has Disney has some stinkers? Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. But they came out with some really good shit for the series too.
Oh yeah.
I will take having to sit through anyway the last three movies to get the Mandalorian to get let's see what some of the other ones are. I do like the Ahsoka series that's came out
Yes.
already.
Real good so far.
Andor I thought was pretty good.
Andor was
Is
great.
it
Obi-Wan.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan. I left Star Wars groups because I couldn't handle people giving slander about that shit. They're just finding shit to bitch about. That miniseries was incredible.
Let's put it this way, and I've said this, and I will say this to the day I die. When little kid Paul from 1977, little 3-year-old Paul, got super excited when I saw Star Wars. That has been ingrained in me my entire life.
Yes.
I don't remember a time before that. Every time that music kicks in, I feel it in my heart. That shit hits me every time. I'm getting fucking goosebumps talking about it right now. I said when that stops happening, I'm done. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people need to do. When you stop falling in love with something, walk away from it. Maybe give it another shot later on.
Yeah.
But don't hate it.
Right.
Don't hate it for other people. Dude, Obi-Wan Kenobi and The Mandalorian, when Luke Skywalker shows up at the end of The Mandalorian, the season finale, me and my son were sitting on that couch over there watching it. And I was 9 years old again. That is 1983, Paul, at that point. That is post Return of the Jedi. I got up and I had goosebumps, man. I was like, oh my, and I was happy. The little kid in me was happy. And as a almost 50-year-old man, when the little kid in you is happy, you take every bit of that and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And then when Obi-Wan hit, and I'm watching that, and me and Joe, like I said, were sitting over here because that's our father-son thing. When his helmet gets cracked, and you can see Anakin underneath the mask, and it keeps fluctuating between Vader's voice and Anakin's voice. And he's like, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. And I'm like, fuck, that hit me right here. And I'm like, that is why I still love Star Wars this day. And that's Disney Star Wars. And
it's something else though, too, because here's something else that people don't realize, because it's not something you can do and experience unless you go to Disney World. Mm-hmm. That area, Galaxy's Edge, my wife and I went there as a part of our honeymoon. You have to, it's almost like Mecca. If you're a Star Wars fan and have been your whole life, you have to make a pilgrimage there. Not only are they adding on to it already, you can see the spot they're adding on. There's a literal Millennium Falcon in this motherfucker. And I got to see it firsthand. They Disneyed the fuck out of this. And what I mean by that is they did what they do best. They overproduced this area to the point where you actually feel like you're in a smuggler's den, in this entire area. If you've never experienced it, you have to. You just have to. I don't know how else to describe it. And that's when people make fun of Disney, I'm like, have you been to Galaxy's Edge? No. Well, then don't make fun of them yet, because you have to experience it.
I'm torn with Galaxy's Edge. I want to go to Galaxy's Edge so bad, but I want to go in costume, and you're not allowed.
Yeah, that is weird.
And because they don't want people to think that you work there.
Yeah, I get it. I get
it.
You would think there would still be some way, like, okay, you have to wear this lanyard.
Yeah, or put a fucking sticker or something on you.
They could if they wanted.
Yeah,
they just don't want.
I mean, and this comes from a guy. I have a full set somewhere around here. I have my Sith robes. I have a full set of Sith robes. I have my lightsabers, if you right back there. Mm-hmm. I have my full set of Stormtrooper armor. I have fucking just shit tons of. I have all the Mandalorian helmets. Me and Joe are going to build armor, and I was like, I want to go there as a character from Star Wars, even if I'm a side character, a fucking stormtrooper or something, I would love to be there just for that.
Yeah.
And you can't do it. And it's like my brain
I
is
would
like,
think within time though they might
yeah,
stop doing that a little bit.
I'm hoping that's why I'm waiting for that day when I can
You
go
know,
down.
when they'll do it when they start doing their own Star Wars conventions. That's it, because they'll do it eventually. When
Yeah,
they
because they
start
already, well,
doing
they got
that,
D3 or whatever thing.
yeah, whatever
Their
that is.
own,
But,
yeah.
yeah,
I don't know. I'm a dork. I dress up, take my kid trick or treating, so I don't care.
I would. There's just nothing big enough to fit my 6'4" fucking 200+ pound ass.
Well, what's really going to suck this year is last year I was over like around 200 pounds. So my costume's not going to fit because I'm down to 160 something. Like,
yep, you shrank quite a bit in the last
yeah,
couple of years. Yeah,
I had to. I actually had to go on my show and tell people I wasn't sick because I was like, nah, man. I was like, if you see my face get, because I had somebody point out that I'm getting like, it's like delving in on the sides. I'm like, nah, I'm just getting healthy. I lost a lot of weight. But no, Tina's like, well, you bring the costume, I'll fix the robes, and so no, I take Vince trick or treating, which is a blast. Like every little kid's like, oh, look at that. So me and Vince are stopping and taking pictures with other little kids. It's hilarious.
Right. Convention photo taking at trick or treat.
But no, it's I mean, me and you have, our friendship's grown. We knew of each other, and then you've come to shop and we've become friends and stuff, and it's a blast. And me and you've had a lot of discussions. It's one reason why I wanted to have you on the show so much, because I've just talked to you about touring. I've talked to you about,
yeah, we've had about 15 to 16 different podcast talks just hanging out at your shop.
No kid. And so I had to have you on because, you are always a blast to talk to, and thanks, a cool dude, and a good guy. And, it's a shame knowing that you guys got so far with Menace and then had to backtrack. But you got lucky because it happened before you got like that advance to make the album, because then you'd had to pay that back with no income.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even know that. I've had to explain that to people a while back, because I know a few years ago some band got like a $3 million and they turned it down, and people were like freaking out. They're like, oh, they turned down They turned down a $3 million advance. That is to make the album. You still got to give them back $3 million and an album. And people don't realize that. And so, like these people who get record deals, I got a record deal. Did you? Or did you just get something you got to pay for the rest of your life?
And on top of that, to add to that as well, and this is to your point, hindsight being 2020 was the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
Obviously it was very upsetting at the time because I felt like I was a failure. We're witnessing right now in Lifetime the death of the record label. It's between streaming, and you see artists like Jelly Roll, who's never once signed a single record deal and is all over your TV screen and your radio right now, which a lot of people don't realize this. And I claim it to the day I die, even though it didn't happen. Jelly Roll was supposed to be on one of the New Year's Evils that we played with Twisted back in, I don't remember the year, I think it was New Year's Evil 8, I think was the number. So it would have been like 2016, 2017, somewhere time for around there. It was at Alrosa Villa in Columbus, which was a decent, again, no longer there anymore, but it was a decent sized venue, but it was still underground music. He was supposed to be on that bill. Now, I don't know what happened was he couldn't leave the state of Nashville last minute. He couldn't make it. So they had to replace him with somebody else. It was literally he canceled day of. So we were supposed to play with it. But that shows you from that point, 2016, 2017, whatever that was, to now, with no record label, this man is one of the number one artists in the world. He's went platinum. I know at least once, maybe twice he's gone platinum. No record label. We were putting our entire career into something that was on its deathbed, we didn't see it that way. I mean, we know streaming was going to change the game a little bit, but we didn't realize it was going to be at this point. I mean, even look at that guy. I don't remember the name of the artist because I'm not real big on current country. But that guy that made that song "Richmond North of Richmond," talking about turning down $8 million contract offers. What the fuck does he need them for? They're going to take the rights to his music. He's not going to have a single right to that master. The record company's going to own that. So when they kick him off, they're still getting paid, and all he gets is residuals. If he keeps going the way he's going now, he owns his own masters. There is no residuals because it's all going into his pocket. And guess what? He's doing thousands of numbers everywhere he goes. Whether or not that's your style, it cannot be denied that the record company model, again, it's doing well for people like Taylor Swift and people like that. But even she doesn't need a label. She needs management. You're always going to need management, but you're not going to need a label. So that's what the way things are going is people are now looking at a group of mainly friends that starts off with friends. I know a lot of people have started off their labels with friends and family members. It doesn't always end up that way, but just the people close to them. They're building teams of people close to them that they know they can trust, and they're doing it on their own. And basically, that's what AXE is doing now at this point. They're still signed to Magic and Ninja Entertainment, don't get me wrong, but all these like events that they're doing, that's all them. They're doing it independently. They just have a label to kind of give them a push. You know what I'm saying? Know what I mean? Know what I'm saying?
Know what I'm saying?
Know what I mean? Know what I mean? But yeah, so we were trying to get a record deal, even if COVID never happened. We were trying to get a record deal at a point where the record companies were dying. Yeah. So even from that perspective, it worked out. No matter which way with hindsight, no matter which way you look at it, it was for the best. But there are times, when I'm sitting backstage booking some of these shows, I'll watch some of these artists and I'll be like, fuck. Like it's like the wrestler who can't go anymore.
Yeah.
I'm the Undertaker watching in Gorilla. You know what I mean? I want to be up there so bad. And don't get me wrong, I've got opportunities. I know if I drop something solo by myself tomorrow, I would have every opportunity in the world. It's funny, I announced today that I was starting a show coming in 2024 of my own to go through a lot of my experiences and talk with guests, mainly like you do.
Yeah.
But more just people I know that I meet in the industry because I meet all these people backstage that I've always thought I could have a great conversation with. I have access to them. Little small teaser on that. But I had announced that I had picked on a project and I was going to be announcing it at the very first podcast that I did the same day. And I started getting show offers from people like, hey, man, if I would have known, I think one of my homies, Andy, was like, oh, dude, if I knew you were coming back, I would have booked you at the show that I was booking in October, which is a music show. Like I was getting offers for a music show because people thought I meant I was going to be putting out a record. Which I'm not, let's make that perfectly clear. But I know if I wanted to, there's still people out there who would be more than happy to have me at their event, which is great to know. I'm not saying I would never do it, but as of right now, I've got other aspirations in life. I love being at home every night. I love the time I get to spend with my wife. There's certain sacrifices you have to make that I'm not willing to make right now to do that. And I don't want to also, something else I won't do is I won't use my positioning with AXE to get me, because I know these guys would if I asked them, hey, put me on the show. I know they would. 9 times out of 10, unless, it was one of those things where like we were just on the last one, we had to, switch it up, which I would get. But I know they would hook me up. I would not insult the people that put the work into this by using that back door when I had taken a 3-year break. I would have to actually have the mindset of, okay, I'm going to start this up again and I'm going to do it the right way again. Just not even just for the people that are doing it, but for myself. Like, because I've always hated people that took that back door.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a legend and you only want to do shows every once in a while, I totally get that. But the people that, I do, this is going to sound like I'm insulting somebody, but it's not. I have nobody in mind here before I say this. It's just the clearest example I can get. It's like the graphics guy that does something for a big artist and they hook him up with a show because he does graphics for him. Again, nothing wrong with that. Because you're still working for him or whatever, but that's just the best example that's not the path I want to go down. No, and there's nothing wrong with using those contacts. I want to
it's probably nice still having that option available. That you're like, it's I'm not going to use it, but it's like a break glass in case of an emergency type thing. It's still
Yeah,
there.
sure.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm going to use it for this upcoming podcast I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally going to, I'm going to end up buying, at some point, I want to get some outdoor recording equipment for, like, I know you can get those, I forget the name brand of it, but it's the devices that you can basically just plug two microphones in and it'll record the actual bass unit, will record the conversation. I could
Yeah.
take something like that with me backstage at Camp Zool and be like, hey, man, you got 15 minutes? Let's go back here in this room real fast and let me just talk to you for 15 minutes to an hour. That perfect opportunity. I will use it for that. But, it's one of those. I'm comfortable with doing that, though, because the guy that's pushing me to do this is my best friend. He was the one that tells me that I should be doing this,
Yeah.
and he thinks it's a great idea. So I know that they're okay with that. So
yeah.
It's okay,
Well, it's one of them ones where do I ask people? I'm like, oh, do you know these people? Would they be interested to be on the show? And if they say, yeah, you got that in. But if they also go, well, I'm not comfortable with that, I wouldn't go, no. I'd be like, man, come on, man, you got an in. No. If as soon as somebody says, no, I'm not comfortable with that, you're like, okay, cool, man, walk away. That's like, okay, I did a horror con last year and I got to go and interview all these horror movie people while I was there. So I was technically had an in, but would I got the promoter to go help me get other people? Maybe. But if they weren't going to come to me, if I asked them, I'm not going to go get somebody else to be like, hey,
right.
You should do this dude's podcast. Go do that right now. Why don't you?
That's an important lesson that
Yeah.
people need to learn too. Your attitude when it comes to these things plays a lot into how far you get with them. Because if you act like a fanboy, you aren't getting anywhere with a lot of these people. If you act like you know these people personally and you're just a fan of them, it's not going to get you very far. Etiquette in a lot of these events is more important than your actual standing.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Have I ever fanned out with a guest? Yes. And I told her right off the bat, because I got to interview Hollywood from Glow.
Yeah.
And literally one of my earliest crushes I've ever had. So I think I was like 12 years old when I fell in love with this like 20-year-old girl, and I had to tell her, I was like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to tell you this right up front. I had the biggest crush on you. I was like, you were like my number 3 crush. And she goes, what were your first 2? I was like, Princess Leia, Carrie Fisher, and Linda Carter, Wonder Woman. She goes, I'm in good company. I'm like, yes, you're in very good company. And we talked and laughed about it. And it was a blast. And so I was really upfront with it. I kind of got that out of the way. And then I kind of went back to being, interviewer Paul and went to that. So, it's so, and I did kind of, I guess, fan out just because my love for the movie. But I kind of kept it in check because I love the movie Manos Hands of Fate. It's just a dumb Z movie that they play on Mystery Science Theater. I got to talk with one of the little girl from the movie, who's a grandmother now, which is hilarious. But and I was like, man, I'm gonna probably, because I love this movie. As dumb as this is, I had to I put it out there and I made sure that it wasn't being like her like, oh well, I don't want to talk to this guy now. So. Yeah. But I was honest and open about it. And I was like, yeah, I might fan out a couple times during the thing and I'll be sorry. And I apologize in advance.
Right. I fanned out twice. I actually always kept my cool in front of everybody musically. Never fanboyed on anyone. That's not true. I did pull Blaze aside once when we were backstage at the first Camp Zool. I did pull him aside and was like, listen, Blaze prefers it if you call him by his real name. So I said, listen, Chris, I've never told you this, but you were one of my biggest influences growing up. Thank you for the music. You gave me a big hug, all that shit. But that wasn't really a mark out. I did mark out twice, both wrestling individuals. First one, back when COVID hit, Conrad Thompson just started ad-free shows. And the way to get some of the listeners signed up to this thing was this was the start of the live Q&A on ad-free shows. I was a part of the first couple ones. Yeah. And the very first one, the most intense one, was Jim Ross. When he did his, it was funny because they introduced me as the person who was here on his wedding day because we had to push back our wedding a year because of COVID. And I had told all the people in the chat before we started doing the talk with Jim Ross that this was supposed to be my wedding day. Um, and I wasn't there or whatever because, COVID. And the lady introduced me as the guy who was here on his wedding day. And Jim Ross made a joke about it, like, oh, don't you think you should be? Or no, he goes, it looks like you made the best decision of your life by not being at your wedding day. So he kind of cut the tension immediately. But once I started thanking him, I was like teary eyed, like, thank you for being the voice of my childhood. I couldn't hold back. And I had a question lined up and everything, but after that, it was just fuck it. I just said something. I don't even remember what I said. So the whole thing was kind of a wash because I couldn't control myself. And then the other one was Eric Bischoff. The first time I ever got a chance to talk to Eric Bischoff. And because I learned, I hated Eric Bischoff when he was in WCW as a kid. He was the devil incarnate in my eyes. But if you actually take the time to listen to some of the things that he says on 83 Weeks and listen to his podcast, I have learned more business mindset from him and how to accurately create anticipation for an event than I have anyone else. And this podcast is 5 years old. So some of the advice that he was giving about what he would do to draw people in to some of the WCW shows, I would listen to, regurgitate mentally, and spit it out in a way that it would work for a music show. So like something that somebody would, people would like jokingly complain, but I think sometimes they meant it, was I'd always be like, dope show announcement coming up next week. And people would fucking hate it. But as soon as I announced the show, the interaction, the shares, the clicks, all of it. And that's something I learned from Eric Bischoff, was create anticipation. There's a reason why that man was able to do what he did at WCW. And if you actually do the research, he gets a bad rap for a lot of things that a lot of people blame him for that was out of his control. Yeah. There's a book called The Nitro Book. Guy Evans is the author. He actually got interviews from ex-WCW employees that people had never talked to before, and has basically laid out, the actual death of WCW and how it actually went down. And one of the common misconceptions is that as bad as the finger poke of doom was, as bad as how he did let Hogan run roughshod, to a degree, you can't blame him because it worked. WCW beat the shit out of WWE for 83 weeks. The formula worked, but it did get old, and he never changed it, of letting Hogan do whatever Hogan wanted to do. He could have fixed everything. Time Warner did not want WCW.
They didn't want wrestling, period.
They didn't want, wrestling at that point in time, and still to this day is looked on badly.
It's the redheaded stepchild of
it is
fucking sports industry. Yeah.
And it's funny because I said this to my wife. She walked in when I was watching the payback pay-per-view 2 weekends ago or whenever it was, because she heard John Cena's voice, and she goes, how is he there? There's the actor strike. That's exactly why he is there, because they're never gonna sweat him for that, because then they have to legitimize professional wrestling and say, John, you can't do that because you're supposed to be on strike from our business. Yep. And they'll never do that, so we can go back to that industry. But anyway, I digress. Yep. Time Warner, Eric Bischoff could have killed WWE and did everything the internet wanted him and Dave Meltzer wanted him to do. They still would have pulled the plug on WCW. Yes. So even though, yes, Eric was at fault of some of these things, it doesn't matter what he would have been able to do. And I think he gets a bad rap because people have listened to Dave Meltzer for so long and smear this guy because Dave Meltzer has such an anti-WCW Hulk Hogan agenda that they listen to that shit and they don't do any research. But Eric will tell you, not always. When it comes to Hogan, he's pretty defensive when it comes to Hogan.
Yeah, he defends him tooth and nail.
Yeah, that is one thing I will say that he does kind of fall by the wayside on. But I learned, this is a long-winded way of saying that I learned so much from that guy. So when I was able to actually sit down and do an ad-free shows thing with him, I did get kind of choked up a little bit. And it's funny because you can see after I tell him what what he's done for me in my life, he starts to tear up. So when he starts to tear up, I was like, pull it together. But I was actually able to pull something out of that. So it wasn't like the JR one where it was just random question that didn't really matter at that point.
Yeah, it's nice when you meet people that like you aspired and your heroes and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, I've had it backfire on me, um, and walked away. But then I've also met cool people that talk to me like we were friends for the last 20 years, and it's a
Yeah,
person I met for the first time that I aspired to. I still talk to comic book artists regularly that I grew up loving. They were like my
yeah,
heroes.
right.
And I talk to them all the time, and it's like now we're just conversing, person to person, friend to friend, colleague, not colleague to colleague, but you know, I'm on
Right,
one
yeah.
side of the comic book industry, they're on the other side of the comic book industry. But
Yeah, but
well,
you are colleagues.
yeah, yeah,
Without
yeah.
you guys, they don't exist. So it's
Well,
fair.
that's even what's nice about being friends with you. I've used some of the advice you've given me on promotion, and I've used that on my own stuff, doing the conventions, doing this, doing that.
Oh yeah, man.
And
That's good
it's
shit.
it's because you learn from your friends, you learn and you
Hmm.
adapt, and yeah, my not music, I'm a comic book guy, but I can still use some of that to turn over here and make
The
that work.
fundamentals are
Yeah,
very
the
identical.
fundamentals are always there for everybody.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
And then when I'm going to have to run this past you one of these days, I keep wanting to bring back live music to Piqua,
yeah.
and you're going to be the first person I go to when I finally get this going and figure out a venue and shit. So
Hey, that's fine with me, man. That's
yeah.
fine with me.
So yeah, because we'll just step up and be like, "Yeah, this is what we're doing now," and then Tina and Leo will be like, "Jesus Christ, one more
Yeah,
fucking thing you guys are gonna do."
yeah. And it's funny because I told Leah I was gonna start this new project, and she's been behind me quite a bit. But I think she knows, like, 'cause she knows how when I obsess over something, I'm going to make it my personality. And she's even made mention of like, well, just take this next one kind of easy and don't wear yourself out because she knows how even I'll like start something. I'm like, oh, this isn't going the way I want it to, and I'll just drop it. And I've done it with a couple shows, but now I think that this upcoming show I'm going to do, I've got a perfect layout in mind, and I think she can sense like, okay, he's playing it months out. He means this because
Yeah,
I when I start playing it months out, I'm going hard in the fucking paint. So yeah, it's the back to our point in the relationship where I'm just going to be constantly doing shit. Yeah, I think she's already bracing for it.
yeah.
So
See, Tina likes it because that keeps me occupied and busy.
yeah,
It keeps me out of trouble. And the nice part about it is that doing the podcast and stuff. Going back to the pandemic, I don't hide this from anybody. I tell everybody this. I was an alcoholic for years, and I got sober, and I'd fallen off a couple times, and it was just dumb stuff. But during the pandemic, depression hit because I didn't
mm-hmm.
know what was going on. I didn't know if the shop was going to be able to recover from it and all that stuff like that. And I'm just stuck at home, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, man, I could use a drink. And it just started getting like, man, I could just knock back a drink right now. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, man, I still got my podcast stuff up, and I got Brandon. I was like, why don't we just do a podcast, talk about, he's learning, from me as and it kind of kept growing. And I'm like, okay, it evolved, and now it's where it is now. But because of that, it kept me from going back to drinking
Yeah,
because I got my mind occupied. I got myself in something constructive and not destructive. And now
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, now I'm like, I'm cool. I don't want to drink anymore. I don't even have any desire to. And I'm
it's
like,
an
hell
outlet.
yeah, I'm fine. So,
Yeah, 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 it's an outlet.
yeah, but it's keeping myself busy.
Yeah. And it's going well for you, man.
Yeah.
I told Leah before we started recording, I was like, you're never going to believe this. Paul got fan mail from other countries and he showed it to me. It's real. So that's something that's like still like you've taken this thing that is helping you, it's helping you. It's your outlet, right?
Yeah.
And it's going well for you. There's
Yeah.
no better feeling than that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's there's no drink in the world that can replicate,
Nope.
hey, what I really enjoy doing is going well. So
Yeah, and it's fun because like I said, one of the cartoon shows started out as a glorified commercial for my shop, and then
yeah,
that spawned into something bigger, and then this is bigger, and then I'm doing another show with another guy who's Hawk from Hawk and Loaded. We're going to do a show where we talk to musicians and metal and stuff like that, and like I said, we're going to bring you back for that show too, because
yeah,
yeah, and we're going to give these guys, these new bands, we're giving them a platform to get their out there on another platform. Yeah, okay, you can stream so much, you can let people know, you can have your Facebook, but until people see you or
yeah,
hear
right,
you or get your
yeah,
story, they can't associate, they can't relate. You know,
yeah,
it's funny, like listening to some of these bands, like I will never be able to associate with some of these kids that are growing up now, that are coming up into the music industry, because, like we talked before we even a lot of these guys got their record deals bought for them.
yeah,
Their parents bought them where they're at. They were already rich kids or already well off, and their
yeah,
parents got
sure,
them where they're at, or they. But very few people grassroots it, start out,
yeah,
bust their ass,
right,
you know okay, what was it? Was it Greta Van Fleet that was didn't do had a record deal and never did one show or something? I think
right,
it's them.
yeah,
Yeah.
mhm,
How the fuck did that happen? Because somebody bought them fucking, a
yeah,
record deal.
sure, sure,
Yeah.
hmm
So and as I've said before, and I'll say this again, I was like, you can only get so far being a Led Zeppelin cover band. Uh
yeah. Yeah, the shit got old very fast. At
yeah.
first, I was kind of like, man, this is good shit. They're bringing this sound back. And I'm like, wait a minute. There's a reason this sound faded away because it's fucking repetitive, and this is no different.
See, but I'm a big fan of like the stoner groove metal, like that kind of like '70s like skater, throwback rock metal.
Sure.
But it doesn't get repetitive because it is yeah, you get fuzzy guitars, you get that, but at least they're not sounding like a pre-existing band. So
Right.
that's what I like.
Sure.
So, but like I said, I'm having fun doing this, and I think you will have a ton of fun doing your gig, and it's going to be really cool. And then you're over at Camp Zool again. What, June next year?
Yeah, it's we haven't talked about the date yet. We haven't even had our first meeting yet. We're actually going to sit down and we talked about this at the end of the last camp. We're actually going to sit down and start physically planning 6 months to 7 months in advance what happens. Because before it was just kind of, if we book it, they will come. Well, they're coming now. So now, it's a little bit more organization involved. So we haven't started planning for it yet. That'll be about December-ish. I think beginning of December, we're going to start putting together a plan. June is more than likely the date because that's just the month that seems to work the best. So I would assume so.
So when you find out, because I'm going to run PickWiCon's going to go from 2 1-day shows to 1 2-day show,
Mm.
and we're shooting for June. So let me know, and we'll try to.
Yeah, I know. It keeps happening. Both keep
Yeah.
I can usually only catch one day, or like this year, not at all because it was the
Yep.
same damn day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
the
know.
next year we're not doing that. We're going to make sure that we're.
And if anything, make sure it's the week after because
Yeah.
then
I'm
I've
going for
got my
that.
payday, right? I've got my payday, and I can blow it all on your con like I do in your shop. When I'm usually making like, fuck, I need to get up to Paul's and you
And then
Paul
I'm
just
over
messed
here. And then I'm over
Paul
here going,
messages me again. He
I
just
got
got a
new
new
books.
he got 10 more boxes. That's what he did before we started this fucking thing. He was like, dude, we got 10 more boxes I just bought off somebody. I'm like, shit.
That's what everybody does. They're like, God, where are you putting all these books? I'm like, dude, I take them to a show. Or actually, my van's full. My big van out front is jam packed full of fucking books right now. I was like, I'd be screwed if somebody stole that.
Yeah, but I am glad because if you remember when I first started coming to your shop, it was because I was first learning Magic, and
Yeah.
I was playing and everything, but I don't know. It feels like Magic is kind of and I'm not taking away from anything away from Magic players, because I know there's hardcore Magic players, especially to come to your shop. But
Mhm.
for me, as somebody that just started playing, it feels like the game is in kind of a weird transitionary uh, spot almost.
Oh, it's
Um,
irritating right now.
yeah, and
It
that
is.
seems to be the general vibe from a lot of people that play. I mean, obviously, some people Magic is their life, and they're going to play even if they put shit on a card. You know, they're still going
Yeah.
to play. But so it was kind of like, and I'm still interested in playing at some point because I've never played physical. It was always on TGM Arena because it was COVID, so I
Yeah.
couldn't play against humans. But that's when I first started coming into your shop. And so when I was kind of getting out of it, I was like, man, I need another hobby. I've always wanted to get into comic books. Obviously, I know the backstory or whatever, but I never started reading comics until about a year and a half ago. Now I've got, I think the last time I checked, I can tell you right now, and I can almost guarantee you, 50% of this I bought from your fucking store. So I've got total comics 3,277 according to my app. 3,277. I can almost guarantee, like I said, 50% was at your shop of
Yep.
these right here.
Well,
Now
no.
imagine if I had stayed into Magic. The financial differences. Dude, I'd be on the corner, right? I wouldn't be doing this podcast right now. I'll be in the corner in Dayton asking people for money, like, you got any fucking dollars, man? I'm trying to get
Anyway,
this Soul
I'll play
Ranger.
some Magic. I'll play some cardboard
Yeah,
crack.
right, right. So it would have been even worse. But nah, man, I like coming to your shop because locally it's the best deal in town. I mean,
Yeah.
your stock is usually in the most pristine condition you can find in this area, and financially having it basically be it's $1 unless I say otherwise. One of the fairest fucking deals I've ever seen since collecting this, and
Yeah.
hence why I have 3,000 of the motherfuckers right now. But you can't beat the price. I consider you a friend, so whenever you get something I like, you
Yeah.
know what it is, you message me, so that's great too. And plus, we can just do this. We bullshit all the time, just like
Fuck yeah.
this. It's awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm,
And
I'm I'm glad that this thing is taking off for you, and it's cool as fuck that you're getting fan mail from other countries and people are starting to tune in more and more. It's great for someone like me who's starting to come back into this world and putting his face out there again, because now I can kind of self promote myself, and it's great, man. You're doing good shit.
yep. Good. Well, man, I'm gonna let you go here. I don't want to keep you all day, and we can always do more on the other show.
Yeah.
And because
Anytime you need me back, man.
yep, because I'm gonna go upstairs and eat dinner because I ain't ate yet today.
Me neither. Dude, okay, real fast, and then we'll wrap this up. We just started that keto shit last week, and we're trying to we're trying to get into the vibe of doing it, because this book that Leah got says like it's this book that worked for my mom. So my mom did keto, did great for her,
Mhm.
and she gave it to Leah. And this guy says you don't want to go right into keto. You kind of want to it's called dirty keto, right?
Yeah.
So we just started that, and bro, I never knew how badly I'd missed bread before in my life than I do right now, dude. It is killing me not having bread.
I did full keto because I did it wrong. I was going to lose a shit
Yeah.
ton of weight going into Halloween last year
Mm-hmm.
because I got that Spider-Man costume. I was going to take my kid trick or treat with Spider-Man. Fuck, I was going to get
Right.
jacked. And so I'm like sitting there, I'm like, all right. So I would start cutting back going into this, and then right before it, first week of October, I was like, no fucking carbs. So I
Yeah.
cut like way back. I did it for a week. There was no bread. I love bread. Well, I don't eat as much as I used to, but there's no pasta.
Yeah.
I cut way
No
back.
sugar.
Yeah. And by Sunday, I felt like shit.
Yeah.
I was angry. I'd lost weight. I'd lost like 7 to 8 pounds in a week. And I was like, I don't like this. I was like, there's gotta be a different way. And so I got off of that. I still go to the gym 3 days a week. I eat oatmeal in the morning. I usually get a chicken wrap for lunch, and then I eat a reasonable meal. Well,
Yeah.
I love hamburgers, but it's one of my problems. So I'd always eat 2 fucking hamburgers every time at dinner.
Yeah.
Well, I just took the extra hamburger, threw it on the bun with the other one, cut the bun out. So I got rid of a bun. Sometimes, depending on how we prepare the hamburgers, I just don't eat a bun, period.
Yeah.
You know, and I started cutting that back. I started cutting back. Like if I'm hungry, don't eat candy. I get fucking dried fruit. I do
Hmm.
that shit. And as I've told people, I was like, when I first started a few years ago, um, I was closing in on 250 pounds, closing in quick. Because I was lazy. I worked at the shop, so I wasn't real active.
Right.
And
Sure.
Vince, I couldn't keep up with Vince at all. And so I just started working out a little bit. I dropped a lot of weight like really quickly. So I went from like almost 250 down to like 225.
Yeah.
Um, then I kind of plateaued for a while, and then I kind of started watching my diet a little bit better. And then I just started cutting back on bread a little bit, just carbs, like not eating that shit all the time like I was. I'd eat like 4 sandwiches a day. I'd get up, eat a couple fucking toast in the morning, eat a sandwich
Hmm.
at lunch, shit like that. Cut that back. Dropped more weight, was down to like 185 ish. And then I didn't pay attention for a while. I knew I dropped some weight. None of my clothes fit me anymore.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, man, one day I walked in the bathroom, I stood on the scale and it said 167. And I'm like, holy shit, I lost my weight.
Yeah.
And people tell me, they're like, well, you did it the right way, because a lot of people lose weight really quick, so you get that extra skin.
Hmm.
And
Right.
so I'm giving my skin time to
Yeah. Sure.
shrink up and stuff. So I'm looking good, I'm feeling good, and I'm really glad I'm at where I'm at, instead of being one of the ones where I just like fucking starve myself, or
Right. Yeah.
work
And
out for like,
again, it's not the way you're supposed to do it.
no,
That's,
no,
I
no,
think
no.
people just think, oh, it's just bread and sugar. I'll be okay. Okay. Well, go look into how much bread and sugar is in everything. It's
Mm-hmm.
because bread is wheat. So you
Yeah.
can't, wheat is a part of that. How much shit's got wheat in it? 90% of the food out there.
Well,
So
that's
yeah.
like people go, why I don't drink pop, I drink juice. You know how much sugar is in juice? I
Yeah.
drink I
Hmm.
drink water and tea. Occasionally I'll buy like a half gallon of orange juice. And I used to drink a half gallon of orange juice in one setting.
Yeah.
Now I drink a half gallon of orange juice over a few days.
Yeah.
Because I don't want that amount of sugar in. I don't drink I can't I do drink energy drinks still sporadically. But even them I get are the ones that are either 0 calories
Yeah. That's what I
or
get.
low
Zero
carb
sugar.
or
Yeah.
whatever. And I drink
Hmm.
those, and
Yeah.
I'm healthy and shit. I've got
Yep.
abs, and fucking who ever expected
Right.
that? 50 years old, I got abs.
But we say all this because we were both talking about how fucking hungry we are. I'm fucking starving
Yep. So
because of
man,
this right now.
you take care. There's Tina telling me food's done. So so,
Damn.
so man, know what I'm saying, brother,
You know what I'm saying? Yep.
bro,
Mhm. Dude, homie.
dude. So man, I got this comic. So you want to swing by this week? Just come in. They're in the back of my car. I'm gonna be bringing them in tomorrow at the shop, and it's always good talking to you. It's always a blast. Anytime, you're always welcome. One of these days, we're gonna have to go get something to eat. Get all of us to go fucking go dinner. So
Yeah, absolutely.
we're gonna
Absolutely,
see a
bro.
band or
Absolutely.
some shit. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for
so
real.
man, take care. I will see you probably tomorrow. I don't
Yeah,
know.
either tomorrow or Tuesday, I'm sure.
Yep.
Thanks, man. I appreciate
Yep.
you.
You're welcome, man. Good seeing you, and take care. Tell Leah I said hi.
We'll do.
Adios.
Later.
Later.